Hi everyone, welcome to Module 4, Part 1. That's what this video is about. As everything I start here at the beginning, to get to Module 4, Part 1, we're going to click Module 4. Then we're going to drop down here to Module 4, Study Activities. Then we're going to jump in here to Part 1. And finally, here are our three study activities for the week, and then we are going to talk about the assignment. We're going to start out with Module 4, S1 Critical Thinking. What we're going to do is we're going to open up this PDF right here, and we're going to go through it. Then we'll be going through creative thinking, which is quite often you hear critical and creative thinking put together, but we're going to tear them apart and look at them kind of separately. And then finally we're going to talk about practical thinking. So this week we've got 3 types of thinking skills, and let's start with critical thinking. Taking a quick look at the calendar, Module 4 Part 1 is due November 18th. As you can see, it's got the 3 parts we just looked at, plus an assignment called Complete and Submit the Problem Solving Assignment. And so we're going to be doing a problem solving assignment. All right, let's jump over here. So we're looking at critical thinking. Now, critical thinking, well, there's a lot of ways to look at this, but it's more than just thinking. It's more than just thinking a lot. Critical thinking is not just sitting around and thinking really hard. That's like working harder is better. Is that true or false? No. I would try to tell my dad that. But would you rather work harder or smarter? Okay, well, instead of thinking harder, think smarter. Does that make sense? Okay. How about answering these questions? Are you a good problem solver? Lots of people are. Lots of people aren't. Are you considered creative? Do you have good judgment? Do you make decisions quickly? They usually turn out to be good decisions. I like to think about things before speaking. I like to think things through before speaking. Kind of like I do. I'm not shy about asking questions when I don't understand something, and I enjoy hearing other people's points of view even when I disagree with them. Of course, all of these are characteristics of someone who's a critical thinker. Okay, critical thinkers are good at solving problems. They're creative. They have good judgment. They are not. This is one place that I struggle in. They don't have a tough time making decisions because they're accustomed to this process of decision making. They usually turn out to be good decisions. They think things through before speaking, and I have another problem with that, although I'm getting better. They don't mind asking questions when they don't understand something. Why would somebody be shy about asking questions? It has to do with being embarrassed. It has to do with being, how would you put this? It has to do with being shy. No, not shy, that's not the right word. Hate to be wrong, okay, or hate to be looked at. There are people who would rather be wrong and nobody know it because they look like good on the outside than admit that they're wrong and learn how to fix it. Does that make sense? So people that are not shy about asking questions when they don't understand something, it's a risk. They open it up and they risk themselves to the people in the room looking at them going, yeah, that was a dumb question, which hardly ever happens, but people are afraid of that. This is one of my strong points, number 7, because I don't have any pride when it comes to stuff like that. I want to learn something, and if I don't know the answer, I'm going to ask a question. And if I have to stop everything and be right in front of people and ask questions, and I've had people look at me like, gee man, who are you? But I don't care, I'm learning. Okay. And finally, number 8, and this is also something I'm very good at, I enjoy hearing other people's points of view even when I disagree with them. Wow, couldn't the world use a little bit more of that right now, huh? So let's talk about critical thinking. Let's try to take a look at the world right now, because the world needs a lot of critical thinking going on, because we just ain't doing it, right? Based on your answers to numbers 1 through 8, how do you feel like you are at critical thinking? You might be high or low. In the following list, check the areas you think you can improve on. Can you improve on applying information, analyzing information, thinking critically, asking questions about information, evaluating information? What does that mean? Well, notice that this is kind of a process here, right? Coming up with new ideas, solving problems, making decisions, and identifying weaknesses and ideas. This is what critical thinkers can do, and that's really important, okay? I love this quote because this is exactly what I was talking about. The essence of the independent mind lies not in what it thinks, but in how it thinks. And this is kind of the difference between thinking harder or thinking smarter, okay? Now, if you want to approach and evaluate something, you really need to do it critically, okay? And so it doesn't mean thinking harder is going to solve the problem. You can't get 50 people in a room, everybody thinking, and necessarily solve the problem any better than one person, because it's not about thinking harder. It's about thinking critically. It's about asking questions and taking a long, hard look at the data and drawing a natural conclusion. And that's not something that people are very good at. In case you haven't noticed lately, if you've watched the news, people fighting over wearing masks, or who should be president, or things like that. There's not a lot of critical thinking going on. What there is a lot of is emotional thinking. There's a lot of simple and lazy thinking, and that's the exact opposite of critical thinking. Now look, thinking comes naturally. By the way, I'm going to do a lot of reading here, so just follow along. I'm going to read a lot of this, and then I'm going to add my own. Thinking comes naturally. You don't have to make it happen, it just does. But you can make it happen in different ways. For example, you can think positively or negatively. You ever met somebody who's a positive thinker versus a negative thinker? Yeah, okay. You can think with your heart rather than rational judgment. You ever met anybody that does that? I know lots of people who are not academically educated, and so they think with their heart rather than thinking with experience or with learning. You know what? They're not always wrong. And that's one thing that's interesting about this isn't about right and wrong. This is about finding out the truth, okay? You can also think strategically and analytically, mathematically, scientifically. These are a few ways in which your mind can process thought. I'm a strong mathematical, scientifical, analytical thinker. Is scientifical a right word? I'm not much of a strategic thinker, right? What forms of thinking do you use? When do you use them, and why? As a college student, you're tasked with engaging and expanding your critical thinking skills. I have dyslexia, you guys. Do you see what I just did? I threw that word critical right over there in front of thinking. My mind took critical and put it right there, and I said critical thinking skills. That's what happens when you have dyslexia. So expanding your thinking skills. One of the most important of these skills is critical thinking. Critical thinking is important because it relates to nearly all tasks, situations, topics, careers, environments, challenges, relationships, opportunities. You can apply this to having a better marriage. You can apply this to being a better parent. You can apply this to making a better ice cream cone. There's so many things that you can do when thinking critically. This is one of the very most important keys to success. The problem is that most people don't do it because it's the opposite of lazy thinking. It's a domain general skill. It's not it's not just reserved for one subject or one area. It's applied to everything. You could say this is a soft skill. Remember studying soft skills? This is a soft skill. And what are we supposed to do with our soft skills? We're supposed to develop them. So this is a soft skill we need to develop. Great leaders have highly attuned critical thinking skills, and you can too. And in fact, you probably have a lot of these skills already. All of your thinking skills, critical thinking may have the greatest value. Okay, so what is critical thinking? It's clear, reasonable, reflective thinking focused on deciding what to believe or do. It means asking probing questions like, how do we know? One thing that, if you ever had a teacher, not a really good teacher, is somebody who's just you can tell they're kind of faking their way through it. And when you start asking these kinds of questions, it flusters them, and it kind of, they get a little, what's the word? Sometimes they even get emotional about it. They're like, just hush and listen. I don't want to explain it, just hush it. You ever had anybody treat you that way? That's because they're not accustomed to being challenged about their thinking. This is good though, to ask somebody, how do we know? I love it when students ask me that, because if I can't answer, I want to be honest with them, and I want them to know, I don't know, but let's find out, right? This is how you should be thinking. Is this true in every case or just in this instance? Okay, and we can apply these questions today. I don't know, wearing masks. We're supposed to all be wearing masks, but I know tons of people who adamantly oppose wearing masks because they think it's a government conspiracy. Now, this isn't about right or wrong, but could we find out the answer just by asking questions, critical thinking? How do we know? How do we know that wearing masks is effective? How do we know that it's not effective? Is this true in every case with all viruses, or is it just coronavirus? You see how you could apply those questions to this? It involves being skeptical. Oh, I love that word, skeptical. Did you know I have people, when I teach students my science classes about scientific thinking and the scientific method, it always starts with skepticism. And everybody seems to think that skepticism is a bad word, but it's a wonderful word. Being skeptical is a good thing, okay? Well, I hate my uncle this, or my dad this, or my mom. They're always so skeptical. Well, they're skeptical because they know that's how you find the truth. They know that's how you get to the bottom of things, is by being skeptical. Skeptics are the ones who don't take things for granted. They want to know deeper. They want to probe. They want to challenge assumptions rather than simply memorizing facts or blindly accepting what you hear or read. Skeptics don't do that. Skeptics don't just blindly accept what they tell us on TV, what they tell us in movies, what they tell us on the nightly news. They want to dig deep, okay? It's a good thing to be skeptical. Imagine, for example, you're reading a history textbook. Here's a history textbook, okay? It tells the history of the United States, of America. Guess who wrote it? Probably a European descendant American who has seen the world through the eyes of a European, right? How do you think then the Native Americans are portrayed? How do you think then that colonization of the U.S. is portrayed? Suppose a Native American had written the book, had written a history textbook on the United States. Would it have portrayed the colonists a little differently than we normally see? You find that the author has a limited scope of research, and so your job, a critical thinker, would want to look at the other sides of the story. And this is something that I think is a good thing that I've seen happen lately, is people trying to really examine all sides of the story. That's critical thinking. Who are critical thinkers and what characteristics do they have in common? Well, they're usually curious and reflective people. They like to explore and probe new areas and seek knowledge, clarification. They'd like to look for new solutions. Gosh, aren't these good people? Critical thinking is a thing you want to do. They ask pertinent questions. They evaluate statements and arguments. And they distinguish facts and opinion. And that's a hard thing to do. And that's kind of the main thing I want to focus on for us, is distinguishing facts and opinion. They're also willing to examine their own beliefs. Oh, goodness gracious. That is so hard to do. But they examine their own beliefs, possess a manner of humility that allows them to admit lack of knowledge or understanding when they need to, and quite often challenge their own beliefs. Okay? Boy, do we need to do that. They're open to changing their mind. Really? They're open to changing their mind? When's the last time you saw somebody change their mind? When's the last time you saw somebody stand up and go, I've been a lifelong Republican and it just doesn't make sense. I think I'm going to become a Democrat. Although I don't think that would be any good either. It's, flip-flop. But what if somebody stood up and said, wait a minute, this whole thing that I've been thinking is true about our government or something? These guys are crazy, And they start thinking of a different way to allow themselves to be governed. That's what a critical thinker would do. Perhaps most of all, they actively enjoy learning, and they seeking new knowledge is a lifelong pursuit. I'll bet you if you find somebody that you truly admire, they're lifelong learners. They're people who constantly challenge themselves to learn how to do new things, or the things that they already know how to do, they learn how to do better. This is what makes a person successful. And this way may well be you. No matter where you're on the road to being a critical thinker, you can always more fully develop and finely tune your skills. Remember, it's a soft skill, so you can always improve it. Doing so will help you develop more balanced arguments, express yourself clearer, read critically, glean important information efficiently, okay? Rather than having to slowly digest stuff. The more you develop this skill, the more you can look at some information and pull stuff out of it quicker. Now, this does come with age, I agree. This does come with experience, I agree. But it's also something that you can just, in your mind, work like a muscle. Critical thinking skills will help you in any profession or any circumstance of life, from science to art to business to teaching. Business. Successful business people are critical thinkers. Successful scientists are critical thinkers. Okay? And with critical thinking, you become a clearer thinker and a problem solver. Critical thinking is skepticism. Sorry. It's examining assumptions. It's challenging reasoning. It's uncovering biases. That's what critical thinking is. And these are good things to do. Be skeptical. Somebody tells you something, go, oh, that's interesting. I have to check that out myself. Okay? Examining assumptions, challenging reasoning. Okay? I don't think your reasoning on that makes sense. Right? And uncovering bias. Critical thinking is not memorizing, group thinking, or blind acceptance of authority. And guess what these two right here are? Right there. I don't know if I can, yeah. That one and that one. That could be shortened down to Facebook or any social media, really. It's amazing how we have turned group thinking into a social science. The ability to convince people on a mass scale that something is true just by posting it on Facebook. That's group thinking. That's blind acceptance of authority. Now, when I say authority, you probably think cops or something, but I'm talking about somebody who claims to know something. They claim to be an authority on the subject, and then we blindly accept that. Okay? Don't ever blindly accept it. Go find out yourself. Okay? There's a video right here by a guy named Lawrence Bland, and it's something I really want you to watch. I'm just going to pop it up here real fast because he talks a lot about critical thinking, and he says, you know, imagine you have a problem, and I teach you how to solve that problem. Have I done anything? Have I done anything? You might, after we do this over and over and over again, you might start learning how to solve problems yourself. But having somebody show you how to solve the problem doesn't do any good. What I really want you to do is I want you to learn how to solve the problems on your own. Because once you have that skill, the one key that you have will open every door. Okay? When I work with students, they just want, I think my student's middle name is just tell me the answer. Because they don't want to sit and think. It requires a lot of work. What they would rather do is have somebody do the work for them. It's simple thinking. Okay? And simple thinking, lazy thinking is the opposite of critical thinking. Now, critical thinking is it's a process of questioning information and data, so we can apply logic to this. You may question the information you read in a textbook. You may question what a politician or a professor or a classmate says. You can also question a commonly held belief or a new idea. With critical thinking, anything and everything is subject to question and examination for the purpose of logically constructed reasoned perspective. So what's logic got to do with it? Well, the word logic comes from the ancient Greek logike, which refers to the science or the art of reasoning. And using a logic, a person evaluates arguments and reasons and strives to distinguish between good and bad reasoning. Okay, so logic is the art of reasoning, or the science of reasoning. And so when we can examine whether an argument has been based on good or bad reasoning, or between truth and falsehood, then we are able to do a lot more examination of it and, you know, incorporate it differently into how we feel about it. Using logic, you can evaluate ideas or claims people make. You can make good decisions and form sound beliefs around the world using logic. Okay, logic is going to help you evaluate other people's ideas, other people's claims. It's going to help you make good decisions about things such as what people are claiming, and it's going to form sound beliefs about the world. Do you think that we're behaving logically about politics in this country? Do you think we're behaving logically about, I don't know, things like race or, I don't know, even coronavirus? I don't think we are. I think we are allowing our emotions to overrule, and we're allowing our emotions to do our thinking for us rather than logic. There's nothing wrong with emotions as long as you don't let it make you be stupid. Let's use a simple example of applying logic to a critical thinking situation. Imagine a man has a PhD in political science. This is somebody who studies politics. He has a PhD in politics, basically. And he works as a professor at a local college. His wife works at the college too. They have 3 children in the local school system. Their family is well known in the community. The man's now running for political office. So here's the thing. Do we vote for this guy? Just because he has a PhD in political science? Just because he's all the things I just said. He's got, his wife works there. They've got 3 young children in the local school system, well known in the community. Does that mean he's going to make a good politician? Are his credentials and experience sufficient for entering public office? The ones that we've already told you? Will he be effective in the political office? Some voters might believe that his personal life and current job on the surface suggests he'll do well in the position, and they'll vote for him just because of that reason. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen in the community I live in. Is that somebody just based on the fact that they have a beautiful family and, you know, have a good job? Well, hey, that's the guy we need for a county commissioner. I've seen that happen over and over again. Is that right? Probably not. In truth, the characteristics described don't guarantee that the man will do a good job. To be honest with you, all that information they gave you at the beginning is kind of irrelevant. What else might you want to know? When you're thinking about this guy, what else? How about whether the man had already held a political office? Did he do a good job? In this case, we want to ask how much information is adequate in order to make a decision based on logic instead of assumptions. With all scenarios, this one included, there's some questions. There's a kind of a series of questions you can ask to get through this. What's happening? That means gather the basic information and begin to think of questions. This guy's running for office. Okay, what do we know about him? All right. Well, the next thing is you should start thinking, what do I know about him? And now what do I want to know about him or her? It's just in this case it was a he. Why is it important? Ask yourself why it's significant and whether or not you agree. Why is it important that we know this about this man? Well, he's going to be running for political office. That's going to have an effect on me. What don't I see? Okay. If you are meeting this person, you may have questions. What kind of experience do you have being a politician? Just because you have a PhD in it doesn't mean that you have experience doing it. How do I know? Ask yourself where the information came from and how it was constructed. Did everything you know about this guy come from himself or somebody trying to get him elected? You think there's a little bias there? Who's saying it? What's the position of the speaker and what's influencing him? This guy's saying it, and he wants this job because it probably pays a lot of money, or it's going to get him something on the back end. Now, it could very well be that you start finding out, oh man, no, this guy's a good guy. He's got real good intentions. Okay, but you're not going to answer those questions if you don't ask. What else? What other ideas exist? Is there other possibilities? Can you think of another situation we could apply this to? Could we apply this to wearing masks? Could we apply this to, I don't know, I don't want to get political. Could we apply this to protesting? Could we apply this to electing president? These are all the things that we've been happening lately. Could we apply this to people who talk to us about civil rights? Could we apply this to the news? I mean, there's so much going on here, and I'm wondering right now if you're even thinking, well, now I don't know what Mr. Thomas is like because he's kind of hitting on some sensitive stuff. Listen, you guys, I'm a very straightforward, normal person that loves everybody, but I do want us to start thinking about everything. Question everything. If you see it on the news, question it. If you see it on Fox News, roll your eyes and go, what? If you see it on MSNBC, just cough into your shoulder and go, bull hockey. Learn for yourself. This is what critical thinkers do. Lazy thinkers just take it on face value. Fox News said it, so it must be the truth. Rachel Maddow said it, so it must be the truth, instead of looking into it themselves, right? For most people, a typical day is filled with critical thinking and problem solving. In fact, critical thinking and problem solving, they go hand in hand. They both refer to using knowledge, facts, and data to solve problems effectively, but within problem solving, you're specifically identifying, selecting, and defending your solution. Below are some examples of using critical thinking to solve a problem. I'm not going to read them all. How about this one? Your campus club has been languishing. Do you guys know what that word means? It's been languishing on account of lack of participation in funds. Languishing basically means that it's kind of declining. The new club president, though, is a marketing major and has identified some strategies to interest students in joining and supporting the club. Implementation is forthcoming. Is that critical thinking? Well, he's a marketing major, he or she, I'm sorry. The new president's a marketing major. They're applying their knowledge to helping to improve the campus club. Okay, they've got ideas for how to get more people to come back into the club. Critical thinking. What's wrong? How do I fix it? Let's skip down here. Let's read this one. Let's read this one. You have a job interview for a position that you feel you are only partially qualified for, although you really want the job and you're excited about the prospects. You analyze how you will explain your skills and experiences as a way to show that you're a good match for a prospective employer. What did you do? You dug deeper. You asked questions about yourself. You were honest about yourself, and you realized that you need to do some changing. And so a critical thinker is prepared to take a look at their life as it is and kind of question their beliefs and be prepared to change. Okay? All right, let's move on. Here's a problem solving activity. I want you guys to just click on it. Well, this is the text only version. It kind of carries you through a process. This video is outstanding. This video is outstanding. It's short, it's even funny. I sent it to my wife to make fun of her, but we all do this. It's not about the nail, and yet we all sit and live inside of our own personal beliefs rather than try to solve the problem. We just want to sit there and languish in it. Now I'm lost. Where did I go? Oh, there I am. Okay. So moving on, I just want you guys to do this on your own right here. Moving on, we're going to talk about evaluating information. This is a difficult skill, right, to do right. All right, it's 4 parts. Read for understanding by using text coding, examining arguments, clarifying thinking, and cultivating habits of mind. So as we read for understanding, this is a deeper read than just looking at it. And one of the things that you may want to do is learn how to text code. As you read something, you may want to assign codes to it, or you can put it in post-it notes or something. And there's this whole strategy. I'm going to show it to you, but I want you to look for it yourself. This whole strategy about how you can label things that you're reading, as in new information, or visualize or make it in my head, or prediction. And as you're looking at information, you can add to it your own notes. This reminds me of, that's a great thing to write. This reminds me of, This reminds me of that other thing I was reading the other day. So it equals something else. Okay. A lot of this it takes a lot of practice. What is text to self connection? What is text to text connection? What is text to world connection? Okay, but you can write in a text to world. I just read this, so I'm going to put a T-W, and then right after that I'm going to say this is just like the mask thing going on today. So when you're looking at notes, or when you're pulling in information, when you're doing research or something, you're going to read for understanding. It's a deep read. Okay, but it also helps you to kind of keep track of things. You can use shorthand however you want it. Okay, look, this is important, or this is something I learned that's new. I wouldn't use the same exclamation point, so I'd pick something else, but this is a big idea. This is dig deeper. Look at this. What we're trying to say is step one of evaluating information is to start looking at the information and look at it deep. Really start thinking about it. Okay, not just reading it, but reading it and interacting with it, and maybe even noting it so that you can it's starting to get clicked into your head. The next step is to examine arguments. Okay, and by examining arguments, what's happening is you're going to start talking about what kind of argument is being made, how far to the hot or cold side is it. And what I mean by that is, come on computer, take a look at this particular YouTube page right here. I want you to watch this video. That's this video here, the spectrum of authority strategy. It says right here the following video explains this, but they're referring to this video here. So when you pull it up, there's a lot of talk in here, but this idea of spectrum of authority, that didn't work. This idea of spectrum of authority is everything that we talk about can be looked at, every argument can be looked at on a spectrum, all the way from the in this case the bottom, the coldness of it, the geometry or the math of it. Then that kind of starts moving into the physics of it, then into the biology, and with biology we start to get close to something that is not cold hard facts. We're talking about cold hard facts. You can't argue with math. If I give you two things and you already have two things, then you have four things. You can't argue with that. Physics is hard to argue with too, although there is some leeway there. Biology, as a biology teacher, I can tell you there's a lot of ways to interpret things, but these are still fairly cold hard facts. They're timeless, they're reliable, they're universal. They're also dull. They don't make for a good argument. Okay, they don't make for an intense argument. The further up you go, you talk about culture, then beliefs, then feelings. Now we're starting to get into stuff where people you can't argue with this, but you can argue with this. Oh my goodness. And this is where we find ourselves today, is instead of looking at things on a spectrum and trying to examine all of it, we just jump over here in feelings. This is what I feel like. Should I wear a mask? Well, in spite of the fact that there's thousands of doctors out there saying do it, in spite of the fact that it makes perfect sense to wear the mask, no, I just don't feel like I should, so I'm not going to. That's too far to the hot side. The geometry of it would be, here's the math, figure it out yourself. That's too far to the cold side. If we're going to have a discussion, if we're going to think about things, we need to kind of look at the whole perspective here. That's what they're trying to say with this idea of examining the arguments. Okay, try to see all sides. Try to look at it just from the cold side all the way to the hot side of an argument, and look at everything. Look at everybody's feelings, beliefs, cultural influences, societal influences, all the way down to the scientific influences. Science isn't always the answer. Sometimes science can come up with a solution that you just look around and go, no, we're not doing that, because you have to have these other sides as well. But we don't just look at one thing. We don't just look at one part. We have to look at the entire spectrum when we examine an argument. Then we're going to clarify our thinking. When you use critical thinking to evaluate information, you need to clarify your thinking to yourself and likely to others. I'm just going to read this. Doing this well is mainly a process of asking and answering probing questions, such as the logic questions discussed earlier up there. Design your questions to fit your needs. Be sure to cover adequate ground. What is the purpose? If we're talking about wearing masks, what's the purpose? What question are we trying to answer? What problem are we trying to solve? What point of view is being expressed? Who's expressing the point of views? Okay, what kind of people are telling us information about wearing masks? What assumptions are we or others making about wearing masks? What other assumptions are we or others making about the people telling us this information? What are the facts and data we know, and how do we know them? Where did they come from? Who collected this information? Oh, you say that the CDC says wear a mask. Well, should we listen to the CDC? Do we trust them? Do we know them? This is where a lot of the problem comes in, because people are skeptical of the Centers for Disease Control sometimes for maybe good reasons. I don't know. Just so you guys know, I wear a mask when I'm supposed to. I'm not making the argument here. I'm just trying to point out what it is to think, to clarify your thinking. What are the concepts we're working with here? Okay, we're talking about people wearing masks all the time, people just wearing masks in a specific place. The conclusions. So people make a conclusion about wearing masks. I'm not going to wear a mask ever, or I'll only wear a mask in certain situations. Does that make sense? Should we wear masks constantly? Should I wear a mask to bed? Should I wear a mask while driving down the road? I don't know. We got to think about it though, right? That's clarify your thinking is know what it said, what you're thinking about in every single one of these situations. Should I wear a mask while I'm in a hospital? Yeah, I think everybody can agree you should there. What are the implications for not wearing masks? Right? Probably nothing. But it could be, anything all the way up to and including death. This is what we mean by clarifying your thinking, is asking these questions. Now, I just gave you guys the mask as an example. I just read an article on it this morning on the internet. But the point I'm trying to make is that you can apply this to anything that you're thinking about, whether it's writing your paper, whether it's arguing with your roommate, whether it's discussing with your instructor the grade you got. You can apply this to anything. This is what we mean by critical thinking. It's much deeper. Then we're going to cultivate habits of mind. This is the last step for a reason. These are the personal commitments, values, and standards you have about the principle of good thinking. Consider your intellectual commitments, values, and standards. Do you approach problems with an open mind, a respect for the truth? Do you have an inquiring attitude? That's asking questions. All right. Some good habits to have when thinking critically are being receptive to having your opinions changed. Are you receptive to that? Would you be receptive to somebody showing you pretty good, irrefutable evidence about something you believe strongly about, to the point to where you're going to go, wow, yeah, I'm going to need to totally change my thinking on that? Okay, critical thinkers can do that. Lazy thinkers don't. Lazy thinkers just stick with it no matter what. And there's lots of examples of that out there. Keep going here. How do we develop ourselves as a critical thinker? Well, there's some pretty easy things to do. Reflect and practice. Always reflect on what you've learned. Okay, is it true? Is it true all the time? How did you arrive at your conclusions? Don't, all this time that you can spend wasting, okay, instead, think about using your time constructively. Even when you're, I don't know if you're relaxing in the bathtub or the hot tub, you can use that time to think constructively. Determine when you do your best thinking and try to learn something new at that part of the day. So always challenge yourself. I could sit down and play Xbox, or I could watch a TED Talk. I could, take a nap, which, by the way, both playing Xbox and taking a nap I think are important. But if you do it too much, you're wasting time. Redefine the way you see things, analyze the influences on your thinking and in your life. I had to do that. I'm not going to tell you who, because it'll give away my politics, but I spent a lot of time watching a certain television news show. It was either CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News, I'll give you that, right? But I spent too much time watching one of those. You can get it on the radio in your car. And I would watch it all day, and when I was driving to town, I'd listen to it. And after a while, I got to thinking, I'm just kind of blindly accepting what these people are saying. And so I started removing it from my life, and now I try to eat. I try to listen to a variety of news sources and do my best to find the truth in there somewhere. Start expressing yourself. Critical thinking also involves being able to express yourself clearly. This is the good thing to do. Learn to express yourself clearly, professionally, without emotion. And then others are going to start allowing you to speak more, because they're able to follow your thinking better. Okay? Enhance your wellness. So, make sure that you're staying physically healthy. And go out and learn to do a better job as a critical thinker. Okay, let's jump down here and go back to the assignment number 2 for just a minute. Oh, for the love of Pete, I can't get it to fit the screen right, so I don't know. Just follow along as I talk about it. But look, creative thinking is it's a companion to critical thinking. It's an invaluable skill for college. It's important because it helps you look at problems and perspectives from problems and situations from a fresh perspective. Creative thinking is always, creative thinking is a way to develop novel or unorthodox solutions that do not depend wholly on past or current solutions. It's a way of employing strategies to clear your mind so that your thoughts and ideas can transcend what appear to be the limitations of a problem. Creative thinking is a way of moving beyond barriers. What a great statement. But listen, okay, creative thinkers are risk takers. Creative thinkers are people who try out. Outside of the box thinking is the only place something gets done. Inside of the box thinking is safe. Inside of the box thinking is where everybody else has been. But outside of the box thinking is when you come up with brand new, never tried before combinations or an approach. Okay, creative thinking. Here's a lot of examples. I won't go through any of them with you, but you know, this is hard to do. Let's just pick one. Develop a marketing pitch for a mock business you're developing. Well, developing a marketing pitch is a big business, right? How do you come up with a brand new way to pitch something that's never been done before? Well, you take your own personal experiences. You take your own personal knowledge. You're unique, and your brain is unique, and you have a unique perspective. You know, they say that no two sunsets are viewed exactly the same, or no sunset is viewed exactly the same by any two people, because you can't. My wife and I could be standing right next to each other holding hands and see something slightly different. Okay? Because not only am I seeing it from a slightly different perspective than her, but I'm also incorporating it into my own personal knowledge, where she's incorporating it in her own personal knowledge and experiences. And we get an entirely different experience, even though we're standing right next to each other holding hands. The same thing with when it comes time to developing, for instance, a marketing pitch. Okay? When someone says, hey, I've got a new type of, I don't know, shampoo I want to sell, you may have you will have a totally unique and interesting perspective on how to use it, what value it is, etc. And so your experiences, your knowledge makes you unique for developing a marketing pitch. That's what creative thinking is taking your own unique perspectives, experience, and then applying it to something. Okay? All right. Now, creative thinking is, it's something that you can't tell. It says how to stimulate creative thinking at the top. How do we stimulate creative thinking? There's lots of ways, but look at these. And I'm telling you, this is such good stuff right here. And I don't think a lot of people know this. First thing, sleep on it. Okay? First thing is sleep on it. Same thing with problem solving, but creative thinking is really problem solving if you think about it. But sleep on it. Pull in tons of information. Take a nap. Over the years, researchers have found that the REM cycle boosts our creativity and problem-solving abilities, providing us with innovative ideas or answers to vexing dilemmas when we awaken. Keep a pen and paper by the bed so you can write down your nocturnal insights if they wake you up. I cannot tell you the number of times I have been beating my head against a problem over and over again and gotten away from it and came back to it, and it was just right there. I like crossword puzzles. I like playing Sudoku. That's what old people do, right? But I can't tell you the number of times I've been frustrated with it, got up and walked away, came back to it, sat down, and was able to solve the problem. Your brain needs a break. I call it a brain break, and it's crucial. It's crucial for everything. When you're studying, when you even when you're taking a test, but also if you're trying to be creative. Sometimes that brain break needs to be extensive, and you need to sleep on it. And I'm telling you, sleeping on it really does work. So if you're finding yourself with a problem, get away from it. Go for a run or hit the gym. Studies indicate that exercise stimulates creative thinking and the brain power boosts last for a few hours. Now, when you reach my age, you just go for a walk. You know, sometimes a trip to the refrigerator is all the exercise you need, but it makes a difference. It also has to do with getting away from it for a while. But getting your juices flowing could literally be physically getting your juices flowing, getting the blood flowing. It increases the oxygen going to the brain. It increases other things like endorphins, and it really does help you to think creatively. Allow your mind to wander. I have a pretty good commute to work, and that's 30 minutes a day that my mind can just wander, and I take it off the leash, man. It's far from being a waste of time. Daydreaming is essential to generating new ideas. I mean, if if you were to like be invisible and be in a vehicle with me when I'm all by myself, you'd think I was crazy, because I'll talk to myself. I'll, you know, roll things around in my head, and sometimes it just comes out. All right. If you're stuck in a problem or creatively blocked, think about something else for a while. Go daydream. Go for a drive. Go do something else. Again, have you noticed a theme? All right, keep learning. Studying something far removed from your area of expertise is especially effective, because guess what? If you are trying to solve a problem about, I don't know, atomic science, and all you did was study atomic science, you're really not going to get new connections. But what if you jumped over here and you started studying, I don't know, volcanic activity? It's a pretty good leap from atomic science to volcanic activity, but if you go over and you start looking at that, it's going to stimulate your brain, and you might even make brand new connections that nobody's thought of. That's what creative thinking is, just making brand new connections nobody thought of. It's the person that has a lot of knowledge about a lot of things that is the most creative thinker, okay? Because they have so much information to draw from, and when you let your mind wander, you can start making those crazy connections. Put yourself in nerve-wracking situations once in a while to fire up your brain. You go into survival mode. Fear and frustration can really trigger innovative thinking, and I've seen it happen. I have a piece of property that I own and I work on a lot, and I find myself challenging myself. I live a long ways away from a hardware store, and so when I'm trying to fix something, if I don't have the right part, I could either drop everything and go to the hardware store and come back, or sometimes, as long as it doesn't cost too much money or endanger me, I'll try to put myself, I'll say, look, maybe, I don't know, pretend like it's the end of the world and you can't go to the hardware store. What would you do, stupid? And I come up with a solution. That's creative thinking. It's kind of surprising how well that works, right? Always keep a notebook. That way you have a record of fleeting thoughts. I actually keep it on my phone. I press record and I talk to my phone a lot. And sometimes those are the best ideas of all. I get my best ideas driving down the road. The problem is I forget 90% of them, okay? Use all your senses. See, taste, smell, touch, hear, think, speak. Be a good observer of people, nature, and events around you. Engage thinking on the right side of your brain. Engage the left side of your brain too, but the right side of your brain is where you have intuition, open-mindedness, visual perception, rhythm. Change your interpretation of an event by putting yourself into a different person's shoes. Think of it differently as a different person or a different situation. Okay, allow ideas to incubate. That means just allow them to sit. Sometimes you just got to put it down, walk away, and come back an hour later, a day later, a week later. Okay, and be open to insight as ideas pop into your mind. Brainstorming is often done with a group of people. You can do it by yourself. Often we just call that daydreaming, but one of the best sentences that you can ask in all of the world is, what would happen if? Okay, now there may be people who's afraid to do that. You know, what would happen if sometimes lead to death? What would happen if I touch this? Bzz, you're dead. But if you can figure out a way to do it safely, saying to yourself or a group of people, what would happen if, and I'm telling you, it's that far-fetched stuff that makes the difference. Those people that say, well, you know, let's just pull it in here and let's keep focused. They're not doing you any favors in a brainstorming group, because quite often the answer comes from way out in left field, and you're not even, you know, you're just surprised by it. How many different ways can we do this? Is another question you can ask. Develop ideas and expand their possibilities, envision the future. Those are things, obviously, right? Use your words and your voice when conveying your original ideas. That's how you speak and write. Avoid using cliches or overly familiar responses to questions or problems, because that's inside of the box. Think of stuff outside of the box to explain answers. Explain how your ideas move beyond the status quo and contribute to a discussion, and then take notes. We're going to just run through this real fast. Use mind mapping to capture ideas. Create pictures or drawings of situations. Those are always good. If you're a visual thinker, those are always good. Let's just jump to the end here. Take breaks. Absolutely take breaks. Especially if you are brainstorming with a group, take breaks. Get up and walk away. Okay. Do physical activities. Maybe that just means getting up and everybody walking around the building once, or walking from one place to the other, or walking and brainstorming is a great idea. Okay. Yeah. So these are all ways to do brainstorming well, and don't let anybody tell you that the way you're doing it is wrong. It's not wrong, and quite often that's what leads to the solution. All right, we're going to call that the end of the day. You can read this. Between critical thinking and creative thinking, if you can do it well, if you can do it properly, okay, you're going to be able to, you're going to see the power of the knowledge of how you're able to solve problems and approach information, and how you're able to find the truth in things. And it's something to really establish and work on. The last thing is practical thinking, and I got to tell you, this is my worst part, and I'm going to let this guy explain it to you. He does a great job. But practical thinking means applying all of your critical and creative thinking to a real world problem and understanding that the real world provides limitations. So people are usually pretty good at one, critical, creative, or practical thinking. People are usually okay at the other, and they really stink at the third one. I'm a great creative thinker. I'm a pretty good critical thinker. But I got to tell you, I'm not very much of a practical thinker. I don't let things limit me, and quite often that leads to outlandish ideas that go too far. So what are you good at? What are you best at? Critical, creative, or practical thinking? Okay, well, let's see what our assignment is. I really want you to watch this guy. This guy's outstanding. Okay, so you guys are pretty good at you guys have done a great job on this so far. I do want to point out some mechanical stuff here. This link is a .docx. It's only going to be opened by Microsoft Word, okay? Depending on your computer, depending on what you're running, you may have some second-party software over there that can open it, and if you can, great. But if you can't, I'm going to put a link right underneath it. As soon as I finish this video, I'm going to put a link to it to this document here, which is a Google Doc. I'm going to make it a little bit larger here to look at, but it's a Google Doc, and I don't know why it's doing that. Well, I shouldn't have done it that way. Well, that's fine. And you can I'll share this with you, and what you have to do is you have to go over here to File, make a copy, and once you make a copy, that's one you can write on. But in order to submit it, you're gonna have to go to, once you're finished writing on it, you're gonna have to go to File, download as a PDF, and once you download as a PDF, you can submit that. Now that's only if, let's see, yeah, okay, whatever, make that go away. That's only if it doesn't originally open from the original link. You can open this up, and it's no big deal, but the directions are pretty straightforward. We're going to briefly think of a problem that's keeping you from academic success. Explain the problem. Are you lazy? Do you have too much work to do? Are you a parent of 3 children and you work 2 jobs? That would have been my problem. Okay. Then I want you to come up with solutions. Use a combination of critical, creative, and practical thinking to identify one possible solution. Write it here in how many words, everybody? Yeah, this isn't a sentence, is it? Then you're going to be looking at the pros and cons of your solution. You're going to come up with another solution, another 100 words, pros and cons. Another solution, another 100 words, pros and cons, right? Then you're going to take those 3 options and evaluate them, and you're going to pick one. And you're not just going to say, I pick option 3. You're going to say, I pick option 3, and here's why. Has to be a minimum of 125 words. Is everybody seeing this? Okay. Don't be handing me in stuff with one sentence. I'm going to send it back. And then finally, you're going to create a goal using your solution that you've chosen. You're going to create a goal, and it's going to be a SMART goal. So don't forget, probably the easiest thing to do is go back and refamiliarize yourself with a SMART acronym, and just explain to me, how is this solution up here SMART, measurable, achievable, reliable, and what's the time frame? Okay, when you get all that typed out, save it and submit it, and you're all done. And that's everything for Module 4A1, you guys. Good luck, and I'll see you next week.